Jim, the Royal Pontiac dealership, that's a great story, but the Royal Bobcat, tell us about that whole thing.
Well, the Bobcat concept, really, which kind of goes back even before the GTO appeared. Royal was involved, as I think I mentioned to you, in this activity even when they were racing and while General Motors was allowing them to race. The whole thing that happened actually is when General Motors said, okay, over, stop. And that was when Pontiac themselves decided, you know, we're going to package this car and kind of keep this whole performance thing going. And that was how the whole conception of the GTO came about. Obviously, what Pontiac had done, and as terrible as this sounds, the reality is that they took racing off the track, because General Motors said, get off the track, right, and put it on the street. Because now you had a car that anybody could go into the dealership and buy, and it had such incredible performance capabilities and was available for such a competitive and attractive price that it did appeal to the very market that we knew we were going out after. You know, if you were able to get a cosigner, you were just over 18 and you could get a cosigner, you could get a loan on these cars. And you had no trouble getting insurance on these cars. So obviously, you know, the dealerships like Royal became a good center of attraction for young people. Royal presented Pontiac with this terrific opportunity to use it as a marketing tool.
Where were they located?
Promotional, and they were located in Royal Oak, Michigan. It was about 30 miles from the Pontiac headquarters in Pontiac, Michigan, which made it a very appropriate, very nice. And the Pontiac engineering guys, particularly the performance-oriented guys, worked very closely with the Royal mechanics and technicians and developed this car, which by the time the GTO became a reality, the Royal Bobcat thing was really a significant activity. You know, and if you had a GTO with a Royal Bobcat package, and remember I told you how all of the magazines used to come in and get a chance to drive these cars. Well, every one of them would tell you exactly what was in that car, because that was a packaged kit that Pontiac approved, and they knew that it didn't really destroy the warranty. It was not a full race concept. It was really, you know, everything that any good, experienced, hot rod-oriented guy would do to a car back in those days to make it run a little better. You got to remember, we had no EPA in those days. Nobody was worried about the emissions. The insurance companies hadn't figured it out. We didn't have to worry really about, you know, breaking any laws or any rules. And the stuff that was done didn't make the cars, you know, unwieldy or difficult to manage. They were really good street cars. And in those days, we had this magnificent fuel full of lead, you know, and so you could pump the compression up to, you know, wherever you wanted to go, 10.5, 10 3/4, 11 and all you did was just get a little more fuel with a little more lead in it, which was available, and these cars would respond.
What exactly was the Royal Bobcat package or accessories or program? What did you get with the Royal Bobcat?
Well, it was everything. It was a program, it was a package, it was accessories. But here's a real good example. This is a 65. You know, this was the year that Pontiac with the GTO really grew up. In fact, we used to laughingly say that the 65 was everything that was wrong with the 64 fixed. The 65 was really, you know, a very, very well executed and a well-engineered car. What did it take to make a Royal Bobcat? Well, the first thing you did is you worked with the hood scoop. Believe it or not, when that car came off the assembly line, this hood scoop was blocked up. You opened up the hood scoop so that the air intake came in.
Okay.
And you moved from there. You put an air cleaner element under it that trapped that cool air, kept the hot air from under the hood, the normal exhaust air that had been manufactured. It kept that from getting up and going. All of the intake really came in through the fresh air system. As you began to feed the car more air, obviously you wanted to give it more fuel, so you'd richen up the carburetor jets, which was an old hot rod trick, but you know, very simple and very easy to do. As you gave the car more air and you gave it more fuel, you could give it a little more timing, particularly if you had the good fuel, you know, that wasn't going to pre-ignite or give you any kind of spark knock. So you would adjust the carburation on it, make sure the jets were richer, and you would change the springs. As simple a thing as that in the distributor, so that your advance curve was faster. You'd get more timing in a little earlier. That would give you more power down low, more acceleration. Then you had a little problem with RPM with the Pontiacs. In those days, we were using hydraulic valve lifters, and so they would pump up. It's a little difficult thing to kind of explain. Everybody, I think your readers will really know. So they developed a little lock nut that was put on top. It was a concept pretty similar to the manual lashed valve lifters, and that prevented the lifters from pumping up. So you could take the car right up to its RPM limit, about 5,800 or maybe 6,000. If you were bold enough and felt ballsy, you could pull a power shift in it and you wouldn't pump up the lifters. Those were the little kind of accessories that were put onto this package. We had a carburetor linkage. Initially, when it came from the factory, it was a hydraulic thing, and there was only 2 positions on it, all the way closed and all the way open, meaning you floored it, you got your full carburation, the tri-power. Well, they developed what they called a manual or a progressive linkage for it. Took that hydraulic setup all together off. You could get partial throttle. You could get the 2 end carburetors to come in at half level if you wanted. You could get them, drive around all day on the center carburetor if you were worried about gas mileage, which nobody was at that time. The usual kinds of things, feed it more air, feed it more fuel, give it more timing, take advantage of the good gas, and make the car perform significantly better. Because in those days, because of the compression ratios we carried and because of the good fuel we had, it would respond to every one of those things.
So a little here and a little here, a little here, and pretty soon you had this, and you had something
and it was
pretty
a matter
special.
of really kind of delicately tuning it, which didn't take a whole lot of sophistication. But that's basically what the Bobcat package. If you were a real serious enthusiast, you might want to pull the cylinder heads and clean up around the valves. You may want to cut the heads a little bit. You may want to put in a little thinner head gasket, all designed to increase the compression or to really improve the flow.